Welcome everybody back to the Downtown Den podcast, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Aleks Subic from Aston University. Aleks, can you just tell our listeners and viewers your role at the university, the head honcho there, of course, and perhaps a little bit about your background and how you landed in Birmingham?
Thank you, Frank, and good afternoon. As Frank mentioned, I'm Professor Aleks Subic, Vice-Chancellor and Chief Executive of Aston University in Birmingham, also now with our campus in London as well, as of recent. I've spent 3.5 years now in Birmingham at this wonderful institution. Prior to that, I spent 35 years in Melbourne, Australia, in key executive leadership roles at two leading technological universities, Swinburne University of Technology and RMIT University, which is one of the largest, not only in Australia, but in that whole Oceania region with over 100,000 students and more than 25,000 students across Asia with multiple campuses. So I bring here significant global experience, but also significant industry and business engagement experience, having led many collaborative initiatives such as innovation precincts, industry hubs, and industry centers and institutes in my time.
Yeah. And I think that is very much demonstrated in terms of the work and the vision that you've brought to Aston University, because of all of the universities that we work with, there are certainly none better in terms of that business collaboration, business engagement. And at this moment in time, your sector is facing challenges, Alek, but it seems to me that many years ago, from the moment you walked through the doors at Aston, so 3 and a bit years ago now, you'd already identified the importance and the need for the university to get close to business.
Absolutely, Frank. I mean, from the outset, when I kind of dug deep into the bones, if I may say, of Aston University, I saw a great fit with my mindset and my background and my history. This is a university that now, is 130 years old as an anchor institution in Birmingham. And we are about to celebrate next year 60 years as a university. But from the very start to date, the golden thread was working with industry, business, the city, the region, to educate young people, to address skill needs, to, through innovation, drive economic growth and socioeconomic transformation. That resonated strongly with me. So when I came, it was clear to me that the new strategy, our 2030 strategy, needed to build on that DNA. You don't kind of come from outside and insert something that's quite foreign. You build on the DNA of the organization. And that's what I believe with my colleagues have done successfully, because as you mentioned, a large portion of our sector is currently under pressure financially due to frozen fees over a decade and, increasing operating costs and also, punitive measures on accepting international students in the country and so on. We, from the very start with the new strategy, had a growth mindset, but driven by a much more, I would say, fine-tuned commercial nous, where realizing we are here to contribute to the greater good and contribute to our society, city, and region, we also realize that we must have a much more agile, entrepreneurial, commercially sustainable way of operating.
Yeah.
So that we can be differentiated in the marketplace by how fast and effectively we respond to industry and business needs. Are we aligned with industry growth areas, with the areas where there are skill gaps, where industry, business, and community genuinely need the universities to step up and address those needs, so that we are not here for ourselves. We are here for the society that we service, for the communities that we serve. And that approach that we've really single-mindedly pursued over the last 3.5 years or so is really paying dividends. It's positioning us, I would say, based on all the data, in the top 25% of universities in the country on how we perform, in terms of our financial sustainability, in terms of how we work with industry and business, and so on. But as you know, even more importantly, it positions us in the top 20 on employability, second in the country on social mobility, first in the country on knowledge transfer partnerships with business. These are really very, very important indicators of performance for us at Aston.
Yeah, all the evidence suggests to me that Aston, as I said earlier, is ahead of the game in terms of identifying the importance of commercialisation in terms of the things that you do, but also integrating the institution into the community. And of course, you work very closely with the public sector, the combined authority, the city council as well. Yes. Just before we get into the parliamentary section, which I'm delighted to say Aston University headline sponsors of, tell me about the thinking around the opening of a campus in London, because again, that's a very innovative move.
It is very innovative, and there are a number of, I would say, drivers for that move. I would name a few. First, it is also part of our broader strategy of connecting the Birmingham innovation ecosystem to the London innovation ecosystem. The London innovation ecosystem is one of the most dynamic, one of the most vibrant in Europe, attracting significant investment, significant tech startups and scale-ups and so on. As we are driving the creation of the Birmingham Innovation Precinct on our campus and around our campus with Woodcock Street building acquisition and so on, we wanted to use also the future HS2 strategy of connecting the two seamlessly, where our positioning in London is about providing a vehicle, a channel for that innovation ecosystem of London to integrate with Birmingham and bring that value add here and drive that ecosystem development in Birmingham. I think that's a very compelling strategy. The second one is we have established the Aston Business School now as the top 100 in the world. And as of this year, our executive MBA and our executive education is ranked third in the UK and 36th globally based on the CEO Global MBA rankings. Now, when we look at all those factors, we wanted to position our premier products in London, where the businesses, the business leaders wanted to access, the innovative entrepreneurial business education that Aston has to bring, rather than us waiting for them to come to Birmingham. It's a very business community, very busy community, right? So we're bringing that premier business school into London, but also as we are now in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution and with digital economy evolving rapidly, we're bringing the digital tech alongside business into London and creating our own micro kind of innovation ecosystem within the broader London innovation ecosystem. That will help our sustainability, financial sustainability, because London is now 5 years running, if I'm not wrong, the #1 student city in the world based on QS rankings. So there are significant number of student cohorts in London that are basically reaching out for us to offer something compelling in London. So we're addressing that market need, but also we're using that as our platform, as our landing pad to engage with business and industry, to both work in London, but also to attract them to Birmingham.
Yeah. And moving on to that role that the university plays, of course, in attracting investment, a big push, of course, that Richard Parker has is to improve FDI, although I have to say the West Midlands and Birmingham in particular has been relatively successful at that in recent times anyway. But the academic angle to the offer that Birmingham has is crucially important, Alec. And I know that you're keen, you've said this in terms of the comments you've made so far, to match the university offer with the needs of the city and the wider city region. Just tell me about how those public-private sector partnerships develop and what those conversations are like in the West Midlands.
So, I mean, starting with the recent West Midlands Growth Plan release, I must say I would like to see, both in narrative as well as in action, a much stronger support and incentive for that contribution of universities to economy in working with industry, business, and community organizations. You know, when I look at the universities in the West Midlands, you know, we contribute about 8.1 billion gross output to UK economy and about 5.2 billion gross value add to the UK economy. The universities in the West Midlands employ 28,000 staff, full-time equivalent staff. So if we look at even, you know, when you mention FDI, international students, the universities in West Midlands, international students that are studying at universities in West Midlands contribute about 3.089 billion to the regional economy and about 1.23 billion to Birmingham alone.
Wow.
If I extrapolate international student contribution to the 10 constituencies in Birmingham alone, that's about 580 million contribution, you know, just to constituencies alone. You know, there's an interesting UUK report, kind of a summary that was provided recently, last year or so, where it says 11 international students generate about 1 million net economic impact to the UK economy. So starting just from that, from the volume of contribution, you can see what a compelling, robust sector this is for our economy and society. And then looking at, for example, recent data that we engaged Metro Dynamics from Manchester to do some analysis of our return on investment from knowledge transfer partnerships. You know, the projects, innovation projects we undertake with SMEs in our region and city, which identified independently that return on investment into knowledge transfer partnership projects with universities is more than 1,000%.
Wow.
You know, when you look at that data, it's so compelling.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a strength that must be harnessed, and where our policies and investments must strategically align with those value adds if we want to augment the overall impact, right?
Yeah. And that is why it must be so frustrating for people in your position to see what you described as a little bit of a barrier now through policies that have been introduced at a national level, perhaps with good intentions, because we know how big an agenda immigration is in the UK at this moment in time. But I do wonder, Alex, whether they're missing the unintended consequences here and putting pressure on institutions, organisations that, as you rightly say, make a huge net contribution to the economy in the UK.
Yes, I would agree with you, Frank. I mean, when I look at the narrative, you know, and the policies, I think one of the mistakes that are typically made is looking at the whole sector and the whole, you know, issue by generalizing, right?
Yes.
You know, we've got over 400 degree awarding institutions in UK, right? About 150 or so universities, of which about 50 universities, you know, are really public universities and operating, you know, in a different quality framework, right? So we're not all the same, and we are all operating in different ways. If there are problems, we should focus on where the problems are. You know, we have exceptional institutions in this country in terms of quality, regulatory framework, and in fact, the UK regulatory framework led by Office for Students is one of the most, I would say, demanding and one of the most stringent, you know, across, you know, the Western world. So it is a very strong regulatory framework, and we have high quality institutions operating. Therefore, it is kind of punitive when you develop policies to safeguard the sector or our institutions based on precedents where institutions perhaps have not actually acted appropriately or haven't safeguarded the quality to our levels that we safeguard. So I think sometimes you throw the baby with the bathwater when you do that, right? We need to differentiate and we need to incentivize the right outcomes, right? Also, we need to reward the right behaviors. I often see, you know, through regulatory framework that the focus is on punitive measures rather than on incentives as well. You know, for example, you know, we reward research excellence through REF, but we don't reward teaching excellence and employability. But when I sit around the table with business leaders, industry leaders, and I ask them what's important to you, they're saying job-ready graduates that have the skills we need.
Yeah.
So I think we need to balance some of this dynamic, right?
Absolutely. And I think the other irony of this conversation, Alex, is that many politicians in government now say to me that they support devolution because one size doesn't fit all. And that's exactly the point that you're making about your sector, yeah?
Exactly right. We have to differentiate, and we have to treat, the sector accordingly, right?
Yeah. Let's move on then to the parliamentary reception. In fact, before that, let me talk about an exciting conference that Aston and Downtown in Business are collaborating on. That's Changemakers Summit that's coming up in November. So after the parliamentary reception, but I know that you and I are very much looking forward to that. It was your idea, so thank you.
Yeah,
we're delighted to be collaborating. But again, it demonstrates to me that forward thinking that you and Aston have in terms of looking at what is innovation, what is tech doing, what are we doing in that health sector, those growth areas that are so important to the West Midlands and to the wider UK economy. And that conference, Alex, as I say, your idea, but again, another way in which I think demonstrates the innovation and the approach that you and Aston have.
Thank you, Frank, for those kind words, but also for the segue. I'm really excited about this collaborative event because we don't have many opportunities to organize something of this type and this scale that both your organizations and Aston are undertaking. And I remember vividly that at one stage when you and I met to discuss, and the idea emerged from that discussion was that question: are we ambitious enough? Are we bold enough? Are we thinking about the future? Or are we still, in this city and region, having low ambition, low inspiration, and thinking just now? And that was the catalyst. That was the provocation that you and I addressed by actually focusing on an event that will bring industry and business leaders, community leaders, government leaders, city leaders together, in an environment that involves an active debate about our collective ambition, collective aspirations. How do we work together to create a thriving ecosystem rather than work in separation? Because the future is about collaboration across sectors. We call that, as you know, at Aston, the quadruple helix model: university, private, public sector, government, business, community, the quadruple helix that creates magic for our city. And we talk about placemaking, and this is really about placemaking through innovation and collaboration.
Yeah. And what we are keen to do through that conference, of course, is, as you rightly say, Alec, raise people's aspirations. We don't want to see in the West Midlands, anywhere else in the UK, of course, but in such a vibrant and place where there's so much opportunity, a race to the bottom. We want to be picking people's heads up, don't we, and saying we can go for gold here because there is so much happening in Birmingham and the wider city region.
Absolutely right. I think it starts with ambition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It starts with ambition. If you have ambition, if you're aspiring to success and to scale, you will get there working together. And I think the moment is right. As we're talking about the West Midlands growth plan, as we're talking about our place in UK and globally, the time is right to raise that ambition, to raise to the top, as we say, rather than to the bottom, right? And I think we have amazing opportunities ahead of us, but we really need to step up. We really need to step up, both in mindset and both in how we work. For example, when we talk about skills, we need to talk about advanced skills as well. We need to talk about AI. We need to talk about, digital tech, health tech. We need to talk about the technologies that the high value-add economy needs. Some of that we may not have yet. You can import that. You can attract that to Birmingham. You can use that to catalyze and to build on. So you don't just build on what you have. You can also create what you don't have. if that's compelling and important to this region, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely does. And as I say, we're very much looking forward to that conference and what comes from it. But finish off with this parliamentary section that we're hosting in Parliament in September. And of course, as I say, Aston University are the headline sponsor. What importance do you attach to Birmingham and again the West Midlands taking its message to London? Obviously, you've seen the potential of partnering with businesses and with institutions in the capital. Again, we see this as a natural step for us to be taking business messages to, let's face it, not just the capital of the UK, but one of the biggest cities on the planet. So we've got to make sure that we take our message in there, haven't we?
Absolutely right, Frank. I mean, one of the reasons why we are so committed and passionate about this event and providing strong support to you and your team is because it's the right thing to do. You know, if we are in fact the second city in UK, although we don't often act as the second city in UK, and if we are also one of the closest major cities to London, let's act like that. We collectively need to pull together to influence decision makers, to influence the economy, to influence business leaders. You know, working together, we have a chance. And this is about that. This is about us pulling together, stronger together, going to London, and hopefully one of many such attempts to really drive value add for this city and positioning this city, you know, quite rightly as the second city of UK and the closest major city to London. That's what we must achieve.
Yeah. And Alex, I think anybody who's been listening to this podcast or watching us will understand and appreciate your passion and why Aston is the successful institution it is. So, as I say, thank you so much for your support with the parliamentary section, with that conference that we're hosting in November. If people want details of either of those events, you go to the bottom of the page here. There is a link taking you to see how you can register for both. So, Alex, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good day.
And have a great weekend, mate.
Same to you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.